Good evening and welcome to Live and Let Live for Saturday, September 22nd, 2007. I'm Gary Johnson. Tonight on Live and Let Live, once again our guest is Tom Lynch, who was on the program on May 26th, and he was talking about the world of divorce and child custody and how complicated it is and how he's ended up spending a very large amount of his money on this issue and how the system just seems to be brought down by paperwork and delays and uncertainty. And Tom is back with us here tonight again to talk about what's been happening with him. And he brought his son, Dimitris. Tom Lynch, welcome to Live and Let Live.
Well, it's great to be here, Gary.
And Dimitris, welcome to Live and Let Live. Hi.
Okay.
Okay. All right, whatever. Well, Tom, let's begin by reviewing your situation. You were divorced and in 2001, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And tell us briefly about how all that came about. You originally went through a proceeding that you thought was basically the end of it, but it turned out to be just the beginning.
Well, that's right, Gary. We had to get divorced twice, and I understand that that's the normal way it's done. The first time, they call it a temporary order, and the second time is the actual divorce.
So you got a temporary order from a judge, and in that order, you were given custody of your son.
That's correct. It was a very large ordeal. We had witnesses, and we went through all the evidence, and there was a hearing that lasted a day, but when the hearing was over, I was told that, great, 6 months from now or maybe up to 2 years, we'll do it again. And everybody gets to stay employed in the interim.
And is this normal?
Yes.
Is it only with contested divorces or what?
Oh, that's a good point. A wise person avoids the system by having an agreed divorce. Our divorce was an agreed divorce in the end, but the temporary orders were hotly contested.
What do you mean by agreed divorce?
In an agreed divorce, the parties involved, typically the man and the wife without the attorneys at that point, will get the forms themselves, pay the fees for filing the forms, which are nominal, and then they'll be divorced.
And that's different from what you ended up with.
Yeah, I did the more conventional thing. Typically, people getting divorced don't get along very well, or they wouldn't be getting divorced. And so we didn't get along very well, and we both wanted custody of Dimitris, and we both wanted to air some grievances. And so we both hired attorneys, and we expected to go to court and do what we did. The surprising part wasn't the initial hearing. The surprising part was that it never ended.
All right. Now, in the initial hearing, you got custody of your son.
Yes.
That is unusual, isn't it?
Yes, it is. The majority of fathers do not get custody of their children. The vast majority. We had a pretty strong case, and in addition, my ex lost her cool during the hearing and told off the judge, and that probably sealed the verdict.
But in your the second proceeding, I guess 6 months later, things have changed.
Yeah, 6 months later was no longer a debate format, a formal format. It was almost a free-for-all by then. How many government services could be hung onto our problems? I felt that both my ex and I were very much taken advantage of and have been since.
Now, when you were on the program in May, you spoke at great length about how the judge, instead of issuing a decision, assigned so many things to other people who handled things, and you talked in particular about, what was an ad litem?
Yeah, there are multiple roles now. Judges, for various reasons, including saying they don't have enough time, including a disregard for the due process of evidence and such that has come about in the family system. And in addition, there's a desire among many attorneys to change divorce into a non-adversarial system. What we have now, one side proposes one thing, the other side debates it. That's an adversarial system. Mm-hmm. So it has gone in multiple directions, and there have been multiple roles assigned for this. These are sort of unofficial courts. Mm-hmm. The ad litem in fact generates a report that almost is always followed, so the ad litem becomes a de facto judge. And the ad litem role has now been supplemented by an attorney amicus role.
All right. We'll talk about that in a moment.
Yeah.
So one thing that was important from the last show was that this is a special set of courts, the family court. It's separate. It has its own separate laws, and you have to hire lawyers who specialize in this kind of case.
Yes. There's no doubt. It's highly specialized. There are even local rules that are different from community to community. And the judges expect very stylized presentations from attorneys.
All right. Now, you've referred to the ad litem, and you talked about that last time. And when we sort of left your story last time, you were at the process of something, I forgot what it was, a custody evaluator.
Yes, we have a custody evaluator number 2.
And before we go into this, the ad litem is somebody that the judge gives this assignment to, and you pay the cost of the ad litem.
The ad litem, I believe, gets money both from the bureaucratic organization that has an ad litem's department, plus I pay an ad litem's fee.
You pay an ad litem's fee. The ad litem, as I recall, then says, well, we need to hire psychologists and others, and you pay for that.
Right. The ad litem is a broker, for family services. In our particular case, our ad litem had formed an organization called Kids Exchange. So she was adamant that Kids Exchange get used.
Sorry, say that again. The ad litem.
Yes, the ad litem.
And tell me again, what is an ad litem? What is an ad litem?
Well, an ad litem is a judge's assistant that the judge signs various powers to. Mm-hmm. On your last show, we held up the form and showed every single box checked so that the ad litem had pretty much the powers of a judge and can always go back and get the judge to do something if the ad litem cares to. And they're an official party. They're an officer of the court. And in this case, also a proprietor at a private organization that the court can order individuals to pay.
All right, this is the key here. The ad litem had some business connection with a company, I guess.
Yes.
Called, what's it called?
Kids Exchange.
Kids Exchange. And this ad litem, who is an assistant of the judge, coincidentally ordered you to use this company.
Yes.
And did that cost you money?
Well, I refused. And so, yes, it cost me dearly, but the money didn't go to the Kids Exchange, as it turns out.
What is Kids Exchange?
Kids Exchange is a place with armed guards where a man or a woman can drop off their kid and leave without having to meet their spouse. And then the spouse will come and then take the child out of the facility. They're in a small strip mall, and so when I say facility, I use the term loosely. And they also perform another service. They also allow supervised visits for parents who, for one reason or another, are not trusted to see their kids by themselves. So they were asking me to drop my son off at a facility where people who are not trusted with children are there under the supervision of armed guards in order to do an exchange, and they asked me to sign a liability release.
Give me some more detail on that.
They would not take any responsibility for what would happen while my son was there.
Now, this is part of the I guess they will say this is part of the process. You have divorced parents. One parent has custody. The other parent gets, I guess, visitation or whatever you want to call it. Like, what do you call it?
Well, visitation's a good term.
Okay.
They've actually evolved through 3 sets of terminology since we started our divorce.
Okay. Well, we'll get to that terminology in a moment, but I want to get through this. So when you basically go to pick up Dimitri, and instead of just going to your ex-wife's home, the idea was you would go to this, I guess, no man's land or neutral territory.
Right.
But they run it.
Right. But they take no responsibility. So here's the conundrum for me. Here is the person that's going to decide what our final orders are pretty much through her report. She wants me to spend money on her business while putting my son in danger. And if I refuse, I'm risking a bad report and not to see my son, which in fact was a battle that ended up being fought, perhaps for that reason.
Okay. Now, when we last left our story, you were dealing with the custody evaluator. I think that was just the beginning.
Yeah, I don't remember if it was the first custody evaluator or the second we were dealing with.
What is a custody evaluator?
Well, custody evaluator, like an ad litem, is another faux judge. They are going to try your case outside of a courtroom with no judge present, with no cross-examination, with no due process of evidence. They are going to go beyond prior orders in their investigations, even though that's illegal in Texas, in a courtroom. And they're going to get down to the gosh darn truth. And then they're going to tell the judge what that gosh darn truth is.
Okay.
And, of course, we pay for that.
You pay for that. Now, one of the big themes of our last show was how much all this was costing. And so the attorneys, we'll talk about how many attorneys you've had and all that. Your bills are adding up.
Oh, yeah. This divorce, in the most conservative way of measuring it, I started to do a divorce modification, I should mention, in 2003. So for 4 years, we've been trying to get into court to have a hearing on modifying our current arrangement. And for 4 years, I have been paying professionals to bring this case to court, always expecting it to be in a few weeks, to have it now be 4 years. And all the while, various professionals have been paid. No.
So one kind of professional you've paid are attorneys.
Yes, attorneys are one, custody evaluators are another, an attorney amicus is another. Now get this, the custody evaluator is turned around and wanting to hire people also, and I'm supposed to pay for them.
All right. About the attorneys, let's go briefly through what these attorneys cost.
The first attorney in 2003 took a $12,000 retainer and did nothing I could observe for about 7 months. And when I said, well, something's got to happen, or, I need my money back, he told me to take a hike. I'm keeping the money. He said, as I believe, to paraphrase, Tom, those are fighting words, to ask for the money back.
Okay, but that's not the only retainer you've been paying.
No, I hired a second attorney and had a similar experience.
$12,000?
No, and this time the attorney kept about $5,000. He also kept the trust to pay the legal assistant. This second time around, I thought I would hedge my bets, or at least I would try to balance the allegiances out, because everybody was working for the attorney last time. So when I wanted to contest what was happening, basically there was nobody. There was a stack of people over there, and only me over here.
Yes.
So this time I hired my own legal assistant, and the attorney set up a trust fund to pay that assistant. And when no papers got filed, and we ended up at some end of a term here, and we wanted to, either something's got to happen or we need the money back, he kept not only the retainer but also the legal assistance trust fund.
All right. Now, what about your next attorney?
The next attorney was actually an interesting fellow. He was strictly business. He has a very large number of clients, and he got things done. He actually got a couple of things resolved for us. The problem is that he took an independent path. Agreements started showing up that I hadn't agreed to.
Uh-huh. Independent path, meaning he's not doing what you want.
That's right.
Okay. All right. But did he cost a lot?
He was the most reasonable of the group.
Okay. Now, what about your next attorney?
The next attorney was a very interesting situation. He was a young attorney. He was genuinely interested in the case. He thought we had a good case. He was preparing to take it to a hearing. Then we ran into the stumbling block. There were some papers given to the first custody evaluator, who I hadn't agreed to. And that was supposed to be an open process, but those papers were not forthcoming in discovery. And so what was needed was called a subpoena to get the papers discovered so we could find out what the hanky-panky going on is with these funny papers that nobody wants to admit exist or whatnot. And he agreed on 3 occasions to write that subpoena and never did. I hired 2 consultants, 2 more attorneys,
okay,
to provide legal opinions about whether those papers should be subpoenaed and legally could be. Both of the consultants agreed they should be. And then the attorney withdrew rather than writing the subpoena.
Okay, I'm kind of trying to keep count of all your attorneys. Is this your now their 5th? How many attorneys
I
are?
lost count here myself.
Okay.
Yeah, when we count in the consultants, yes.
Do you have an attorney now?
Well, shortly I won't.
Dad, one time, didn't you have 77 attorneys? You're forgetting
7?
2. Yeah, you're forgetting 2.
7? I think actually we're almost getting to the 7th one here. So,
okay.
So what about your 6th attorney? Okay.
This is no doubt an exciting event.
Yes.
The current attorney has recently proposed withdrawing. He had a $20,000 retainer.
Now all these
Yes.
attorneys, well, many are getting retainers.
Oh, they all got retainers.
Okay.
This fellow had a $20,000 retainer and sent me a $20,000 invoice 7 days after receiving the retainer, or excuse me, after being hired. And I mean, virtually the check hit the bank and it was spent. And we have gone out another at least $10,000 since then. And he's I think a fellow that he's of the category of attorney who wants to see divorces settled rather than tried. He's been involved in what they call collaborative law, but I hired him to try the case. And virtually as soon as I hired him to try the case and there was a commitment made, we were diverted.
Okay.
Yes.
So the reason I mentioned this is because you have spent a lot of money on attorneys and retainers and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I have a great deal of faith that the system can work.
You do? All right. Well, I don't know why, but all right. All right. So then that's attorneys. And so that those retainers, 20,000 here, 12,000 there, they start adding up after a while.
Oh, no, yeah, I've not had much spare spending money since this thing started.
Okay. Now, you also have been paying for psychologists.
Yeah, yes.
And,
Or in some cases
and
not
this
paying
is
for
where Dimitri can kind of tell us what's going on with the psychologists. Now, I want you to explain to me, why are we even talking about psychologists at all?
Well, that's actually a mystery. In my humble opinion, what's happened with the legal system is that they have moved away from fact-based assessments and legal arguments and instead have moved into character assessments and character judgments. This is both in civil and criminal cases. And so instead of relying on, I had 11 witnesses for this case, and my attorney has not spoken to any of them. And the judges are regularly making exceptions to laws in Texas. For example, I mentioned
What do you
due
mean?
process. Well, for example, due process requires cross-examinations and certain dates of evidence and certain kind of evidence to be brought in. and witnesses to be cross-examinable. But through the psychologists, they can have what are called phantom witnesses. A psychologist is...
Who is phantom witness your term?
Well, it's a term I've heard. I don't
Okay.
know how official it is. But a phantom witness is a person who never gets cross-examined because nobody ever knows they exist. And the psychologist comes up with the witness.
I'm sorry, you lost me. Say that again. A psychologist comes up with a phantom witness in a court of law?
Yeah, well, the custody evaluator doesn't have to follow law. But the custody evaluator will make a report a judge always follows. So a custody evaluator or an ad litem is a de facto judge. But they're a de facto judge that is not encumbered with having to be careful about the evidence. They can keep secrets, and then they can ask you questions against those secrets without you even knowing what they are.
Okay, but what is this phantom witness thing? What?
Well, so for example, a custody evaluator can say, I've lived in this area a long time, and gosh, so-and-so over at the school will give me the real scoop. And so they'll call up so-and-so over the school, and they'll get the real scoop. And then maybe make a decision based on that. Me or my ex or whoever will never know that person ever had input.
Okay, well, that's maybe it's kind of a behind the scenes thing, but that's a real person, the phantom witness.
Yes, the phantom witness is a real person.
And so your gripe is what, you don't know about it, or what is the issue?
There's no cross-examination.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I don't know where to begin with all these psychologists. You have the ad litem, and the ad litem says, we need some psychologists. We need a psychologist to talk to Dimitri.
Dimitri, how many psychologists have you talked to?
6.
6.
Well, 5 and 6.
Okay. You've talked to 5, 6 psychologists.
No, 6 actually.
6. Why? Are you crazy? Why are you talking to psychologists? They just tell you that?
Well, I don't need psychology.
You don't need it. So these are...
And pretty much all they do is some write down wrong notes, and some just keep asking me the same question until I answer it the way they want it.
Some ask you the same question until you answer it the way they want it.
Yeah.
So they ask you a question, you answer the question.
They ask me the question again until I say what they want.
Can you give me an example of what kind of question they repeat?
Who do you want to live with? I say my dad. Then they ask, who do you want to live with again? About a minute later, then
they ask you who you want to live with.
A bunch of times during the session.
Really?
Yeah. Until I change my answer. This psychologist, especially Carol Dalton, did it for 20 minutes.
For 20 minutes, she kept asking you, who do you want to live with?
Yeah.
So
until I changed my answer.
When you go to a psychologist, and if you don't want to talk about this, I understand, but what is the general purpose of this meeting? Is it, I mean, I guess they're taking notes and stuff. Why are you seeing a psychologist at all? The court is ordering this, I guess, to see if you're happy or something, I guess. Is it only to ask you which parent you want to live with?
No. Can I see your list here?
Uh-huh.
I'll point out the ones that aren't. Okay.
I don't know. These are just my notes here.
The school psychologist sometimes calls me
You have a school psychologist? Well, now explain that to me.
It's a school counselor. For some reason, she just wants me to go there a bunch of times.
You are now. This is separate from the court-ordered psychologist.
Yeah.
You go to school. How old are you?
9, and I'm in 4th grade.
You're in the 4th grade, and you go to public school.
Yeah.
And so the school counselor wants to see you?
Yeah, for no bizarre reason.
Uh-huh. And the school is the school's counselor a psychologist?
She got a degree in psychology, and she keeps talking about respect, and she says your feelings are okay, but you're not allowed to express them.
Okay. Tom, do you know what this respect thing is?
I believe, Gary, that it's a federal program that's related to train little boys to respect women when they grow older. It's documented in Christina Hoff Sommers' book, The War on Boys, and it's pretty silly. I mean, one of the things that the program suggests, and which they did at Dimitris School, was they didn't allow the little boys to play tag, because running and chasing a girl was a prototype for a behavior later in life that they thought was.
All right. So that respect is not just a general term. It has a very specific meaning as part of this federal program.
Yes.
All right. Now, but that's a school thing that's not really related to your divorce, right?
Well, not quite. This school counselor has sent material about me to Ms. Dalton, for example, in her records.
And who's Miss Dalton?
Miss Dalton was a psychologist that Dimitris saw, who was supposed to be Dimitris' therapist, but she broke ethics and wanted to actually testify. She betrayed her relationship with my little boy in order to have a word in the actual custody dispute.
Okay, so I want to slow down here.
Yes.
This psychologist, Carol Dalton was her name?
Yes.
Yeah.
She was ordered, okay, let's start from square one. You have a judge. The judge chose an ad litem at this point?
Actually, this gets back to Kids Exchange indirectly.
Okay.
Carol Dalton replaced another psychologist by the name of Peggy. Our initial psychologist had the same divorce attorney as my ex-wife. She was appointed by the ad litem. And when I initially complained about this, I was labeled a complainer, and I was imagining that there were conflicts of interest, etc. And they were anxious to get me off talking to counselors myself to rectify this. And then a friend of mine in town told me that about the connection, which was lucky. Most folks probably don't have as many connections into Austin as I do. Most people probably never know they're hoodwinked. The system is very corrupt, and it processes people for their money.
All right. Now,
Yes.
one of the issues that came up in your first interview on this show was
Yes.
that this is kind of a small world. It's
Yes.
a family court. There are only relatively few lawyers who are, I guess, certified to practice this kind of issue and know enough
Yes.
about it to deal with it. So everybody knows each other.
That's correct.
And so this is part of the problem. All right. We've covered so many different things. I want to kind of tie it back together. You have seen how many psychologists? 6?
Yeah, and what I'd like to express here is that I want to live with my dad
Mm-hmm.
and see my mom about whenever I want, but that means I'll tell my dad and he'll go over there. That means also if it's necessary.
Okay. And that's sort of the opposite of the way it is now.
Yeah.
The court has given
And I
you...
mean by necessary, like if we're in the middle of ocean, I can't say that because we have to turn around.
in the
So
middle of
we
the ocean.
Yeah, so if we're in the middle, our hobby sailing, as you can see on my dad's shirt.
Uh-huh.
And-
You have something on your shirt. I don't know if we can zoom in on that or not. What does that say?
This is an Alyssa cruise shirt.
What is Alyssa?
The Alyssa is a museum ship that's in Galveston, Texas, and she has a volunteer crew. When I was in college, I was out in the Gulf of Mexico sailing in the Alyssa. So
All right, well, I think
Yeah.
we need to explain something here. I don't know if you said it on this show or not. When one parent gets custody,
yes,
the other parent gets visitation, and I think you
Yes.
said the term is that this has changed, and so
Yes.
you explain that, what that is, and how much time is allowed, and also Dimitri referred to trips and how that plays into the amount of time you have with him.
well, There are a couple of variables that have come into play here. One was the move-away mom syndrome. In a decade ago, there was a problem with after custody was awarded to mom, and mom had child support and perhaps alimony. She could afford to leave her job. She would move to another state just to deny the dad access to the child.
Okay, now this is a key point, I think,
Yeah.
because if let's say you live in a town and you want to visit, and you're the father and you are not awarded custody and you want to
Right.
visit the child,
Right.
if the parent who got custody moves to another town, theoretically you can visit whenever it is every other weekend, but the travel expenses are
Right.
so much it makes it impractical for you to do that.
Right. So the move-away mom thing, in combination with the schedules that the courts are ordering, make it impossible to do a long-distance move. So, for example, when the economy crashes in a certain area, which happens time to time, for example, say microprocessors at Digital, and dad needs to move in order to follow his career, or mom needs to move in order to follow his career, the courts are unresponsive.
Mm-hmm.
What they'll do is they order bi-weekly rotations on weekends. So in my case, for example, I was in California on a project, and I was flying back to Austin every 2 weeks. I had, 2 cars, 2 apartments, 2 everything. It was very expensive. And if I hadn't done that, then I could be called I could be accused of abandoning my son.
Oh, really?
Right. So instead of being able to rotate every 3 months or something reasonable, we have what's called a standard decree. And ironically, that standard decree is partly justified from the move-away mom's point of view, because it also does not allow the parent, the custodial parent, as the term you'd be using, to move.
Now, you've referred to the standard decree. What is the standard decree?
Standard decree is a creation of the Texas legislature with input from various lobbying groups. And it is supposed to be the result of the it is the burden of proof in a custody case goes to somebody who doesn't want to follow the standard decree. So the idea is that all divorces will end up in the standard decree, and a few exceptions won't, will fight it out.
Okay.
That vision has never occurred.
Oh.
No, it's never occurred in your case or in general?
In general, it does.
Why do you say that?
Well, the divorces are still expensive.
Yes.
It hasn't reduced the cost of divorce, and I would say it has also created, as happens with a lot of laws that try to force human behavior into a mold. It also created a whole cottage industry of false allegation. Mm-hmm. Because the burden of proof is on a parent who doesn't want to follow the standard decree to prove something. Mm-hmm. There are a whole bunch of people who attempt to prove something, even though there's nothing to prove. I think Ms. Epstein, who was the head of the bar in Boston, was it 7 years, 10 years back, said basically that a man is, you can't mount a defense for a custody modification for a man who's got false allegations against him. There's a huge system that's set up to process people. The guardian ad litem's office is 2-story building, and
the guardian ad, what are you talking about? The office?
There are a large number of government workers now who get involved in divorces, and they all need something to do. It goes back to Thomas Hobbes, the English philosopher. All bureaucracies want to expand. All bureaucracies want to have bigger budgets. All people in them want to get promoted.
Yes.
Everybody needs business.
Okay.
So what happens is, with a standard decree, is everybody's waiting for that false allegation so they can process it.
And you say there's so many they've got their own office or
No,
building.
they got their own offices, and it's a huge thing.
Okay. Now, I want to go back to you, Dimitri. You've talked to these psychologists, And you said something a moment ago that it interests me. You said that one of the psychologists you talked to wrote down the wrong notes. What did you mean by that?
She's been writing down notes that are false. Carol Dalton has been writing false notes.
So, okay, you mean notes about what you're saying?
Yeah, that are false.
How do you know? First of all, how do you know what she's writing down? Do you know how?
I saw one of the emails.
Okay, and so what is the difference between what you were saying and what she wrote down?
She's been making me say stuff that I don't want to say, that are untrue, by asking me the same thing over and over again, like I said earlier.
Okay.
Until I say I want to live with my mom, but I don't want to live with my mom, I want to live with my dad.
Okay.
And she's been writing I want to live with my mom, even though I want to live with my dad.
Do you feel comfortable in saying why you prefer to live with your dad as opposed to your mom?
One thing, well, we travel a lot. We're better. We're not. We also do. I also learn a lot more. And my mom is, I don't necessarily love her as much as my dad. I'd like to spend a lot more time with my dad too.
Okay, but you do love your mom.
Yeah, so this would be a nice arrangement. I live with my dad, so whenever I want to see my mom, I tell my dad and I go see her. But other than that, I live with my dad.
Okay, and the courts have said the other way around. They decided the other way. What do you think about that?
I don't think it should be like that. I think it's 3 months, 1 week. 3 months with my dad, 1 week with me. Well, my mom, 1 week with me, and 3 months with my dad.
Okay. All right. Now, that's how you feel.
Yeah.
And
I want to spend a lot more time with my dad.
now, and the court sort of decided that the first time, and that's changed because of all the things that have been going on all these years.
I like the first arrangement we had. Not the parents together, but the temporary order. Was
Actually, Gary,
me living with my dad.
that came to an end because my ex took all my office files over to the opposing attorney, and she extorted an agreement out of me against my office files.
Now, you mentioned this on the last time you were on the show.
Yes, right.
Because these files they had to do with your ability to earn a living.
Right.
You couldn't earn, or I don't know if you couldn't earn any living at all.
Actually,
but
the situation was much worse than that. I do intellectual property work, and a lot of, there are companies that I did work with that were concerned that the material in my files remained secret, trade secrets.
All right. Now, a lot of this is unique to your case. So I'd like to talk about things that are systemic.
Well, this is indicative of a systemic problem. It is more common for an overzealous attorney, perhaps with an ideological point of view or access to a grant that promotes a point of view, to needle the other side. Insults.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Court orders. Kids Exchange is an example. If the opposing attorney would say, they would imply to a judge, "You're so untrustworthy with your kid. You should be in front of you should have supervised, exchanges." That typically makes people very frustrated, and they'll stack these on one after another until people are at the breaking point. Sometimes they do break. You see in the news, it's horrible. Other times they'll spend a lot of money, which
yes.
There is also an opinion held. My impression is that there's an opinion held by many attorneys that if they take all the money that's available to the parties, that the parties will reprioritize their desire to get along and to end the divorce So some attorneys feel
I'm sorry, translate that into English.
some attorneys feel that if they take all your money, you'll settle, and therefore they've done you a service.
You'll settle, meaning what?
You'll go to your ex and you'll say, you know, this divorce argument is so horrible because it's making us broke. Why don't we get along?
You get back together.
Or just make an agreement and get along, settle this without the attorneys, or bring this to an end.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's
Can I get
deal.
off this head right now?
Say that again.
I'm kind of. When's your next, commercial break?
Oh, we don't have commercial break. This is public access. Why, did you want to walk off the set?
Yes,
Okay. Well, you mean permanently or just for a moment?
for a moment.
Okay, sure, that's fine.
Maybe we shouldn't have given him so many Cokes up front.
Yeah, right.
Mainly, I want to finish my drink.
Oh, you want to get you're
Yeah.
you're thirsty? Okay.
I like to finish.
Okay. Well, when you're
You lose more guests that way, don't you?
yeah, that's right. When you're ready, you can come back and we'll talk again.
It's not there. You'll have to go outside.
Okay. Well, a moment ago, Tom, when we were talking about the ad litem,
Yes.
you said that there's a new somebody in there. What was that?
Actually, I believe there are 4 rules now, but there's another one called an attorney amicus.
Attorney amicus.
Yes.
What is the attorney amicus? Because you mentioned this in the last program, but it's you didn't have one yet.
Right. The attorney amicus did get assigned, and nobody knows what he does, not even the judge. The only thing we know for sure that he does is charge money. According to the Texas Family Code, he's supposed to provide legal precedent. I don't believe he's supposed to provide a report at the end, but since those involved don't know what he really does, he does, I guess, sort of what was expected. He's actually just recently resigned, so
And this is another person who is assigned by the court.
that's
but
correct.
like the ad litem. And did you have any expenses involved with this?
Oh, well, I have been ordered by the court to pay him $3,000. He was asking for $8,000 from me, but thus far I have not paid him any money.
And his power is this ad litem could order psychologists. The attorney amicus, what powers does the attorney amicus have?
Yeah, the attorney amicus is a more limiting position. The attorney amicus is supposed to raise the awareness of legal precedent in the court proceedings. In other words, guide the judge on being a judge, I guess.
I guess. Well, that was part of the issues. All these consultants who are hired are doing the judge's job.
Well, in my humble opinion, at perhaps some risk to myself mentioning this publicly, judges don't like to give decisions, especially elected judges. And there are some understandable reasons. The amount of time that it takes to look over all the material generated by all these court-brokered professionals is taxing on the system. If they actually followed through with all the things they ordered, they wouldn't have time to hear all the cases.
Okay.
And yeah, another reason, of course, if you're elected, is it's very nice to be able to offset the liability of a decision on someone else.
All right. Now, you have all these things, the ad litem, the attorney amicus, and so forth. And I want you to tell me, if you know any statistics, how typical is this in divorce cases? Do 10% or 100% or whatever have ad litems and so forth?
Ad litems are fairly common.
Uh-huh.
Attorney amicus is a newer role. I think they're becoming more common. Many judges are just treating them like attorney ad litems. They don't really. There's a judge.
So this is
Tarrant
very
County.
typical.
Yeah.
The kind of consultant, and then the consultant has this power to order psychologists. This is very common in.
Yeah, there are a
child
lot of
custody
people
cases.
that need to be employed in the system. There's been tens of thousands of degrees given out in counseling and psychology. All these people need something to do. There are many, many government roles. As I mentioned, there are buildings full of these folks in this area now. And divorce is not the only thing related to the legal system that has expanded. If you just watch the news, you can see, things, once you get into the legal system, it takes years. Basically, the proceedings expand and continue until people run out of money.
Now, I asked this because even though your case is an interesting case, I'm interested in the system.
Right.
And so this is not just happening to you. It's happening to a lot of people.
Right.
And so it's important for people watching this program to know that this is happening to a lot of people, or probably maybe some people who are watching the program right now who are going through similar situations themselves.
Yeah, I would say that perhaps the only unusual thing about my case relative to other people's cases is that I have perhaps a higher level of awareness of the going-ons, and so
Yes.
I have raised the stakes, so to speak, by showing up on things like public access television and giving away sort of some of the secrets of the trade. As I said earlier, most people who go through the system probably never realize they were hoodwinked. One of the messages that they give, and I say they, I mean the attorneys, the ad litems, the psychologists, over and over again, is that there's something wrong with you for wanting something different, and we're going to help you.
You mentioned this complaint.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
I was going to say about there isn't just a federal program called Respect. I think the school counselor is crazy about it.
She likes it.
She has like respect on all the posters on the whole.
Well, there are posters
Yeah.
for this program?
In the holes, they have respect. Like, you must respect teachers, blah, blah, blah,
You must respect teachers. So what other posters
You must
are there?
respect your peers. Like, I don't need to respect some of my peers. They don't even know me.
So respect is not just a federal program, and it's not just a word.
Yeah.
It's a big deal to your school counselor.
Yeah, my school is actually crazy about respect. It might change because my school last year just changed principals at the very end of the year. And
We like the prior principal. I'm curious, Dimitri, which do they spend more time on, talking about respect and all this stuff, or science?
definitely respect. They don't even have a science teacher. They just have like science for 30 minutes out of books. They do a science experiment like once a month or so.
So, are you familiar with the term political correctness, or?
Sort of. I don't exactly know.
Okay, I don't know.
It means sort of like somebody's, because I'm
Dimitri, do you think the teachers are more liberal or more conservative?
liberal.
Why do you say that?
Well, I don't say all of them are. I know these two are definitely, my first Miss, forgot what her name was.
Well, here, let me ask a question
Okay.
a different way. Do you think the teachers have the same values as your parents?
No,
Do you think these psychologists that you talk to have the same values as your parents?
no. And I'm
So
tired
do you
of
think,
psychologists
do you
making me say other things.
do you think that they're perhaps displacing what your parents tell you, moving it out of the way and filling it with something else?
I was about to say that. Yes, I do. Like that.
Can you give me an example of that?
I'm going to say Carol Dalton. She bends her words on my note, her notes. First, she tries to get me to say not to live with my mom, though. Well, actually, she tries to make me say equal. Then she bends her notes to do that.
Now,
And
Carol
then she
Dalton, she's not the school psychologist, though, is she?
She isn't.
She was the ad litem's choice.
Well, what
Second
about
choice.
what about
after
the school
conflict of
psychologist, the school counselor?
Well, I wasn't expecting to talk much about her.
Okay,
but
all right.
I expect them to
All right, that's okay.
move
That's
on
fair
to
enough.
the real point. that I want to live with my dad.
Okay.
So,
All right.
Dimitri came here
You
with
can
a
talk
purpose,
about
huh?
whatever you want to, Dimitri. I'm very proud of you for coming on the television at all, because that's very brave of you. Well, we've got about 8 minutes here left, Tom.
Okay.
What are some main points that you want to make here? You know, on the last time you were on the show, you said there was so much material you might even write a book about all this.
He's been writing multiple books and correcting mistakes. I think he has like 5 of them. He wrote, 5 corrections to him.
You got 5 drafts or what?
Yeah. His last one, he printed like 12 of them and gave them out to the witnesses. These books, they've been changing sizes lately. The latest ones were this thick, this wide. Yeah.
Well, are these just legal documents or what?
And he's also writing about our last summer vacation, and he's been actually writing a lot about,
Yeah, I'm a writer,
Uh-huh.
but that's my hobby as opposed to my occupation. And I do intend to put my experiences to pen.
We could give you one of these books if my dad has any.
Okay.
I've been giving it a shot. I haven't got anything together yet that I would present to the public, but eventually I'll get there. And
All right.
if I could find a publisher, that'd be fantastic.
Well, I bring this up because on the last show you had an email address that you wanted people to send email to. I don't
Right.
know if, I give out my email address all the time and I get some email, but not a whole lot. But if people want to get in contact with you, you have an email address.
Yes, if you can put it up, I'd appreciate that. It's dimitrisdad@gmail.com. That's DIMITRISDAD@gmail.com. And if you have any divorce experiences, or you can relate to anything that I've talked about, or you just want to gab about some things you know, and I want to hear it. And please send it along.
I could tell him his phone number.
No, don't do that.
Okay.
My cell phone on the air, it might be a little bit much.
I don't know. I give them anyway.
You would? Huh?
I get my phone will be at the end of the show.
Okay. Well, you can use Gary's phone there.
That's fine.
Well, how about I give?
No, don't do
Okay.
So, are there groups or organizations that are dealing with these issues?
Well, in the Austin area, the primary focus on fathers and in general low-income families trying to fight a court battle, say as a pro se litigant. There is one organization in town that's it used to be called the Lone Star Fathershood Initiative, but it's not a father's rights group, in my humble opinion. It's not a father's rights group per se, as much as it is a low-income or perhaps newly low-income person's help group. Attorneys will come there and give it good advice. It's probably a good experience to get a larger understanding of the system as it's formally supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
There are some national organizations, of course. The most exciting organization for a while was Fathers for Justice. You know, they had the Spider-Man, the guy in the Spider-Man costume climb the, was it some bridge they climbed and such? They get a lot of
Fathers for Justice.
Fathers for Justice.
Isn't that out of England?
It was originally an English organization. The English organization actually split. There's also now an American organization with that name.
Okay. There's one thing that we didn't talk about. I don't know if you want to talk about this. You believe, and if you don't feel comfortable, that's fine talking about this, Tom, but that hypnotism was being used by one of these psychologists. Is that right?
Well, unfortunately, that's one of those terms that has very weighty connotations. But hypnosis is routinely being used to relax children. It was used, for example, by various child protective services, people to release repressed memories in children. It was gaining popularity, and then they ran across what was called the false memory syndrome, where the children were actually making things up. It was also used on adults that way. Many people are familiar with stage hypnotists. I mean, there's something real there that I remember when I was a boy going and seeing a neighbor lady act like a chicken on a stage, and she had no memory of it afterwards.
Really?
Yeah, in fact, I acted like a chicken on a stage. I wouldn't want to remember it either.
Okay.
But it's most psychologists are trained in hypnosis as part of their programs in college. It's difficult for a layman to understand what that means.
Yes. Difficult for me.
Well, one of the simplest examples is the unquestioned assumption. You are told something, you go into a lawyer, you're getting a divorce, and you're told a whole bunch of facts. This is the way it is. You have to do this, this, and that. And then you think about those facts that you're told, and then you build from them. You think, okay, to do this, I have to do this other thing, and you start thinking in terms of how the situation's outlined to you. And then you never realize, after you've gone down the path, that in the end, what happens is you end up spending a lot of your family's money, and you end up with a standard decree without ever knowing it. That's actually a form of hypnosis.
But I take it that when Dimitris says that he's asked the same question over and over again, you believe that is not just asking the question over and over again. You think that there's some hypnosis going on.
Well, I can't speak to whether or not in this case.
Dad, 1 more minute.
I can't speak to whether or not in this case that is a hypnotic therapeutic technique. I wasn't there to see it, but that is in general a technique. Once something's repeated over and over and over again, people become a little confused and they don't know that they disagree with that thing anymore.
Yes.
They use it in commercials all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as Dimitri pointed out, we are near the end of the show, and Tom Lynch, I want to thank you for being with us here on Live and Let Live, and Dimitri, I want to thank you for being with us here for our show.
I got a question. Am I ever going to be here on this show again?
Well, I don't know. I guess this is more of an audition. Why?
Well, I was going to say, when's the next show?
Well, we're on every week. But you're not going to be on next week. As a matter of fact, I'm going to have to wrap up the show now.
I might be able to make 2 weeks.
Well, good for you,
Okay.
but you're not on next week. I want to thank you for being on the show this week. I'm Gary Johnson. Good night. Next week, our guest will be a speech by Richard Morris, who will be talking about asset protection.
Okay.